He destroyed the DEA administrator in seconds. Every excuse collapsed. Every dodge exposed. When she tried to dance around the truth about the cartels, he cornered her with the one question she couldn't outrun, and you're about to watch it explode on camera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Administrator, the two cartels that are sending fentanyl into the United States are located in Mexico, aren't they?
Yes, sir.
And isn't it a fact that we could stop those cartels in their tracks if President Lopez Obrador would invite American military and/or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with his military and law enforcement personnel?
Senator, what I would say from my purview as the head of the DEA.
But is my statement true or not?
What I would say is that we're focused on the two cartels, who we believe are doing exactly what you say. They are responsible for the fentanyl coming.
Let me ask you again. If President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and/or American law enforcement officials to come into Mexico to work with the same in Mexico, we could stop the cartels, could we not?
Senator, I believe this is a whole of government effort and has to be, including whether it's the military, us, FBI,
now,
and others.
Madam Administrator, I've listened to you here for almost an hour telling us how bad fentanyl is. Thank you for that, but we know.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask you a third time. If President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and/or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with the same in Mexico, we could stop the cartels. Isn't that a fact?
So, Senator, I can speak to the law enforcement side of this, and you just mentioned law enforcement. I believe that this is vital for both Mexico and the United States. Mexicans are dying as well, as we showed in the Chapitos.
Well, then why don't we stop them?
So
would it help? Let me ask you a fourth time. Would it help if President Lopez Obrador, I don't think it's a complicated question, Madam Administrator. You're asking us for more money every year, more money, and it gets worse, worse, and worse. You know, in the real world, the nitty-gritty of the real world, when you fail, you get fired. In government, when you fail, you get more money because obviously you need it. Now, let me ask you a fourth time. If President Lopez Obrador, and I'd appreciate an answer, if President Lopez Obrador invited the American military and/or law enforcement personnel to come into Mexico and work with his, we could stop the cartels, couldn't we?
I believe, Senator, that we can stop the cartels.
Okay, have you made that suggestion to President Biden?
If I could, I believe that we can stop the cartels by...
Have you made that suggestion to President Biden?
Senator, I have been very vocal in the whole of government setting on the importance of fentanyl and all of us using every single effort and authority that we have.
Why hasn't President Biden done it? I mean, this is the way the American people whose sons and daughters are dying look at it. Our economy is $23 trillion. Mexico's economy is $1.3 trillion. Ours is 18 times bigger. We buy $400 billion every year from Mexico. Without the people of America, Mexico, figuratively speaking, would be eating cat food out of a can and living in a tent behind an outback. So why don't you and the president, embarrassing no one, get on the phone and call President Lopez Obrador and make him a deal he can't refuse to allow our military and our law enforcement officials to go into Mexico and work with his to stop the cartels? Why don't you do that?
Senator, what I am doing every single day is working with the incredible men and women of DEA who are risking their lives across 334 offices worldwide.
And I appreciate that, but you're not doing what would work. Why won't you do what will work?
Senator, we are...
Why don't you call the president this afternoon and say, Mr. President, let's call President Lopez Obrador privately and make him a deal he can't refuse. Because we both know that President Lopez Obrador has neither the ability nor the will to stop the cartels. But yet we go along and pretend that they're our friends, and Mexico is our friend. But he has criminal organizations that are killing our people, and you know how to stop it, and the president does, and you're not doing it.
Senator, we are working every day to stop it.
But you're not doing what would stop it.
We are transforming, and we are working in countless ways across the globe to do what needs to be done for the American people. And there is nothing that the men and
when
women...
it's important to you, you make it happen. When it's not important to you, you make an excuse.
What you just witnessed wasn't a hearing. It was a reckoning. A United States senator finally said out loud what millions of Americans have been screaming. The fentanyl crisis isn't just bad policy. It's a catastrophic failure enabled by political cowardice, diplomatic weakness, and an administration that refuses to use the power it actually has. The exchange you saw didn't hinge on complicated economics, classified intelligence, or nuanced geopolitics. It centered on one brutally simple question. If the president of Mexico asked the United States to come in and help eliminate the cartels, could we do it? And the answer, which the DEA administrator ran from again and again, is yes. Absolutely yes. That fact terrifies the institutions in Washington, because once you admit America could stop the cartels, you must also admit that we haven't. And once you admit we haven't, you must explain why over 100,000 Americans died last year from fentanyl poisoning, and why the government continues funding the same failing strategies while avoiding the only one with the power to cripple the cartels at their source. The administrator stalled, dodged, repeated rehearsed talking points, but every time she refused to answer, the truth became louder. She wasn't confused. She wasn't unsure. She was avoiding accountability, because admitting the truth would mean confronting the biggest scandal of all. This administration doesn't want to pressure Mexico. They don't want to destabilize diplomatic optics. They don't want to demand action from a foreign leader who has already proven he has no capacity and no desire to dismantle the cartels that control entire regions of his country. That is the rot beneath this hearing. Institutions protecting institutions, bureaucracies protecting careers, leaders protecting politics instead of people, while American teenagers die with blue lips on their bedroom floors, while parents bury children who thought they were taking a harmless pill, while fentanyl flows across the border with ruthless efficiency, weaponizing American weakness to turn cartel profits into billions. The senator laid it out with devastating clarity. America's economy is 18 times larger than Mexico's. We buy nearly $400 billion worth of goods from them every year. Their prosperity is tied to our existence. We have leverage, unlimited leverage, and yet we act like beggars instead of the superpower we are. Why? Why do our leaders refuse to use the full weight of American power to stop the cartels? Why won't they even consider asking Mexico's president to authorize joint operations? Why won't they push the one option that could actually dismantle the structures killing our citizens? These are not abstract questions. They are questions that should haunt every official responsible for national security, because the fentanyl crisis is not theoretical. It is real. It is brutal. It is happening in every zip code. Rich, poor, suburban, urban, rural. No demographic is safe. No parent is immune. And while families shatter, Washington continues its ritual of hearings, statements, and funding requests, with no measurable progress, no real accountability, and no urgency that matches the scale of the emergency. That is why this confrontation mattered. It cut straight through the smokescreen. When the administrator repeated the phrase whole of government approach, she wasn't describing a strategy. She was describing a shield, a bureaucratic umbrella that protects agencies from owning their failures. And that's the heart of this crisis. No one is accountable. The DEA blames Congress. Congress blames Mexico. Mexico blames the U.S. demand for drugs. The White House blames international challenges. Meanwhile, the cartels don't blame anyone. They just expand, profit, and kill. They are operating with more money, more weapons, more territory, and more sophistication than ever before. They kidnap, they extort, they enslave, they poison, they massacre. They openly post videos with military-grade equipment because they fear no one, least of all the United States government, which continues treating them like a law enforcement nuisance instead of the international terrorist organizations they have become. That's why the senator's question was so explosive. If Mexico allowed us, could we stop them? The administrator knew the truth. Everyone in that room knew the truth. Everyone in the intelligence community knows the truth. And every cartel leader knows the truth. The answer is yes, because the United States military is the most powerful force in human history. Because the cartels are not 12-dimensional geniuses, they are criminals who thrive only because governments let them. Because every fentanyl super lab, every trafficking route, every money laundering channel, every operational hub is known to U.S. intelligence and could be neutralized if Washington had the political will. And that is the real scandal. We have the ability, but not the will. Which leads to the next question. Why doesn't this administration want to win? Why is not upsetting Mexico more important than American lives? Why is diplomacy being used as a shield for inaction instead of a tool for survival? Why do we pretend Mexico is fighting the cartels when its government is terrified, infiltrated, and overwhelmed by them? The senator asked why the president doesn't call López Obrador directly. Why he doesn't use America's power to force cooperation. Why he doesn't demand justice for the families who will never see their children again. And the administrator had no answer, because the institutions she represents are not built to confront failure. They are built to explain it away. Her final words made that painfully clear. We are transforming. Transforming into what? A nation that normalizes mass overdose? A government that accepts cartel dominance as inevitable? A leadership class that shrugs while caskets close? That's the emotional core of this hearing. Americans are dying. Institutions are deflecting. Leaders are hiding. And the people responsible for stopping the crisis are somehow the ones least willing to use the tools that would actually stop it. This isn't incompetence. This is abandonment, a betrayal of responsibility, a refusal to defend the citizens of this country from the most lethal drug crisis in its history. And that brings us to the final uncomfortable truth. No one is above the Constitution. No agency is above accountability. No administration is above scrutiny. Power must answer to the people, especially when that power fails. And this hearing exposed failure in its purest form. So what do we do now? We stay loud. We stay angry. We demand more than excuses. We demand results. We demand leadership that protects Americans instead of protecting diplomatic comfort. And we refuse to let this crisis fade into normalcy. Share this video so Americans see the truth unfiltered. Subscribe so you never miss another moment where silence meets accountability. Because this fight isn't about politics, it's about survival, and it's far from over.